We had Austin Gayle join the show of The Ringer, and we talked about Coach of the Year candidates. We both had a different number one. Let's get it.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, man, to today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special shout out to all those everydayers out there. Don't forget to subscribe, follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I, of course, am your host, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst over at The Messenger at Mike Renner _ on any social media platform, mostly Twitter, though. I don't use much else. And today's podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. The easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Austin Gayle joins the show as he does every single week, and he wanted to talk about Coach of the Year candidates. He also told me he's diving into some prospects, so next week we'll be getting some of that, but let's get right into that interview. IAG, Coach of the Year candidates. Before we get into who we actually think should be Coach of the Year, our top threes, respectively, what do you even look for in Coach of the Year? Because if you go back through the history of Coach of the Year, sometimes it's the best team. Like Ron Rivera in 2015 won when they went 15-1 for Carolina Panthers. Obvious one, obviously. Last year, though, Brian Daboll, Giants go 9-7. He wins the award. So what, in your opinion, is it the guy who exceeds expectations the most? Because that was obviously what Daboll did in his first year as Giants head coach. Or is it just who's basically team has performed the best, and then their ergo his head coach must be the best?
I think that what the award obviously is a coach that has exceeded expectations. That's why Brian Daboll won it last year. And I was on Brian Daboll as Coach of the Year last year because he made the Giants literally a playoff team that won a playoff game with Daniel Jones and the state of that roster with first year head coach and all these things to bring expectations down, and obviously he exceeds those. But the more I thought about the award, the more I just don't think it should be that. I think that if we talked a lot about awards the last time I was on this podcast, if we wanted to honor coaches, specifically first year head coaches that exceed expectations right away, there could be a separate award for that, right? Because I think Shane Steichen, the Indianapolis Colts head coach, who we'll probably talk about in this conversation, he's a first-year head coach who's exceeding expectations and has been dealt a crazy hand with the Anthony Richardson injury, the Jonathan Taylor injury, et cetera, et cetera. But if I had to argue who the best coach in the league is, I'm not saying Shane Steichen, right? And that's where it's different than the MVP, right? The MVP is not, we weren't expecting them to be that good, but they've been great. That's obviously more reserved for comeback player of the year when the player's hurt or whatever. So I think I'm shifting away from, I want to give this to, what's usually a first or second year head coach, sometimes later than that, who, because of a quarterback situation or whatever, the expectations were a lot lower than where they ended up, right? Maybe they make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like Demeco Ryans is another candidate we'll probably talk about because the Texans were not expected to make the playoffs. They had a bad roster. They had a rookie quarterback, but they've exceeded those expectations with a first year head coach, blah, blah, blah. For me, I think that the shift should be, we don't look at first and second year head coaches maybe slightly exceeding expectations, making a wild card, maybe winning a playoff game as this bar to being the coach of the year. I do think that we should look at which coach is actually not just maximizing their roster, but also at the top of the league, right? And now that's where people maybe say voter fatigue, in the mid 2000s, people are do we just do Belichick every year because they're winning and all this stuff? Maybe, but is that bad? Is it that bad to say, hey, this coach is the best in the league and continues to be the best in the league? So I don't know. I'm interested because my rankings kind of reflect that. And I know that the odds on who's going to win don't reflect that. But I do think the award more often should be hey, which coach can we, while watching the tape, not just looking at box score and all that stuff, by actually watching the tape and the impact they have on the game, which coach do we feel is not just maximizing a bad roster, but even with a good roster, exceeding expectations, which I think, my number one candidate will be that guy.
Yeah, you lost me when you said watching the tape because that's just never going to happen when we talk about the Coach of the Year award. People are going to look at the win-loss column. They're going to remember that Monday Night Football game that happened in either December or late November. And that's what they're going to make their minds up off of, sadly. So let's get into the award. I tend to agree that you have to evaluate. You have to, it's like we talked about with the MVP award. You have to evaluate what the guy's actually doing on a football field, right? Like you cannot just sit back and point to one stat, point to an expectation. You have to say, what's the guy actually doing? And I think the three guys I landed on are not three guys who came in with low expectations for their respective franchises, but I think they have coached darn well, given the hands they've been dealt. All right, I'll let you kick it off, though. Who's your number three?
My number three, and this is cheating, but it's a two-way tie between Demeco Ryans and Shane Steichen, because I don't want to put them higher. I know Shane Steichen's the favorite, and I think Demeco Ryans is either the second or third favorite to win it. I don't want to put them any higher than the other two guys I have on my list, because they're first-year head coaches that no one expected to win anything. And in those expectations even lower for Steichen after he lost lost Anthony Richardson, and they're winning more games than people expected. I think both teams could sneak into the wild card, right? Maybe one doesn't, whatever. That to me is a massive, awesome feat. I think I give the edge between the two. If I had to break the tie, to Demeco Ryans, because he's also working with a first-year offensive play caller, and they've been generally amazing at one of the hardest things to do in the NFL, which is develop a rookie quarterback, actually put a rookie quarterback in a position to succeed. Whereas the Indianapolis Colts, every week, week in and week out, I think they're one of the most well-coached teams in all three phases, both sides of the ball and the punting and the special team situation. They've also been dealt a very difficult hand, and they've had to go from Anthony Richardson to Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They've also had injuries with Jonathan Taylor. And I think if you wanted to give the edge to Shane Steichen, is the Colts run game has been unreal. And I know they have a really good offensive line, but when you look at the system that Steichen has brought from Philly to the Indianapolis Colts to unlock Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, and when he was healthy, Anthony Richardson as a runner, that to me has been such a massive edge in why they've been able to produce, even with Gardner Minshew, even with a rookie Anthony Richardson, who had very little in terms of winning success at Florida. Both those guys have been fantastic. I don't think we should continue to look at first-year head coaches that the expectation was the floor and they've gone to maybe the halfway point of that or slightly above as the barometer for coach of the year. But they're both well-deserving of significant praise because they've accomplished objectively very difficult things in such a short amount of time.
I will say, though, I don't think and I agree with all the points you made there. I will just say, their records, both 8-6, I think they benefit, one, from being in a division that probably has the second weakest top dog of any division. Jacksonville Jaguars the top dog. I'd say every other division besides the NFC South has a stronger top dog. And the NFC South is a division that the AFC South played this year. So they benefit from the fact they played the weakest division.
True. That's a very good point.
With no team even above 500. So benefiting a little bit from that, but I 100% agree. Both coaches look good. Both those rookie quarterbacks look good. This South's going to be a dogfight for a while. Get right back to AG in a second. But first, PrizePicks is the largest DFS platform in North America, the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stats are what make PrizePicks the number one DFS app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports, made easy. My number three, though, I went with Mike McCarthy, the Dallas Cowboys head coach. One, because they have the second most points of any team in the NFL this season. He's at this point in Dak Prescott's career raised him to a level that we've never seen before. He's made adjustments from the beginning of the year in how they're operating offensively to now in their drop back passing game, a real emphasis on it, and really kind of putting the ball in Dak's hands more than ever before in that offense. And, they're 10-4 right now. They've had some duds, obviously. Not shown up in some big games. That's why he's third on this list and not higher. But I think at 10-4 and still in command of the NFC East, I didn't think a lot of people thought that was going to be the case with this Cowboys team last year. You literally a couple months ago put him on the worst fan base to be a fan of list that we did. So, yeah, I have to say Mike McCarthy's done a bang-up job this year as head coach. And he also is responsible for Dak Prescott's cadence. So that deserves some points, too.
Wait, Mike McCarthy is the guy who's responsible for that?
Yes. He, over the course of the offseason, they went back to the drawing board because he was now taking over play calling duties with Kellen Moore leaving. And he said he wanted a clearer cadence to have more consistency on their offense. And they came up with it together. So
you texted me late night.
We go.
You texted me late night saying, yeah, here we go. And
just the voice message
is the move. It's like, as soon as you sent it, I just did it right where it was. Yeah,
here we go.
It's so good.
It hits,
so
dude.
Good. It does hit. It does hit. I can't hate. I will say if you didn't listen to that podcast, I said they were one of the worst fan bases because they're like, every year there's the expectation that they go to the Super Bowl and they don't. They don't even they barely win playoff games. And that has to be extremely frustrating. That has to be, I don't know. Anyway, I'll move off of that. I think Mike McCarthy's a great pick because that's someone too that how many articles were written or at least tweets sent about losing Kellen Moore and how they were going to be, they were going to be a regression candidate. Yeah. I like it. My next guy, I'm going Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski, I know Jim Schwartz is a reason for a lot of their success. Nate Tice of The Athletic had a really good tweet showing that literally over the last 2+ decades, the Cleveland Browns defense is the best defense single season by success rate we've seen. Literally the best, 67% defensive success rate. And a lot of that is Jim Schwartz. A lot of that is the talent that they have on that defense. Give credit to Stefanski for bringing Jim Schwartz in. But then also Stefanski, who's the offensive play caller for the Cleveland Browns, has been dealt one of the worst quarterback situation hands this year, but insane. Losing obviously Deshaun Watson and having that situation. Then you also you give Dorian Thompson-Robinson a swing of the bat. You give PJ Walker a swing of the bat. Now they're starting Joe freaking Flacco. Joe Flacco could be starting a playoff game for the work that Jim Schwartz, who Stefanski brought in as an assistant this year, and Kevin Stefanski, or because Kevin Stefanski, what he's doing is, in my opinion, it's the offensive play caller, put that team in a position to succeed when the Jets, who've tried everything under the sun to put together an offense that even remotely makes sense, have utterly failed. It's one of the worst offenses we've seen over the last 10+ years. Then you factor this in. Nick Chubb has been out since week 3. Jack Conklin, their starting left tackle, has been out since week 1. Jedrick Wills, their starting right tackle, has been out, I think, since week 7. They've had so many injuries offensively, have had all the way to the point where they're starting Joe Flacco and 2 new tackles on both sides. And yet they're still, I know they're not an offensive juggernaut, but it's still that they're winning games and they're competitive with Joe Flacco. I mean, that has been there's so many situations where the Cleveland Browns are one of the lowest ranked teams this year and maybe positioning themselves for, at the top of the draft, but they're not because of, I feel their ability with Stefanski as their leader, obviously being resilient.
No, I have to agree. This is, he won the Coach of the Year 2 years ago, so it'd probably be surprising if he won it, 2 times in 3 years. But yeah, it definitely makes Deshaun Watson look kind of even worse. The fact that Flacco's moving the ball with this offense, it's hey, a guy literally who was on the street can come in and outplay you and get Browns fans legitimately more excited about their prospects than they were when you were starting. So, yeah, not great for him. But I did not have him in my top 3. My number 2 is Kyle Shanahan. Everyone raves about him. Everyone can't stop talking about how he's responsible and it's not Brock Purdy. Well, if it's him and they're leading an offense right now that is an absolute juggernaut, truly one of the most efficient offenses we've seen in the past handful of years. And the past handful of weeks has just been completely unstoppable ever since, they lost to the Bengals way back in October. So, yeah, when that's the case, I'm going to tip my hat to the guy who's widely recognized as the best offensive play caller in the NFL, who has the best team now in the NFL. So, yeah, he deserves at least top 2.
Kyle Shanahan's my 1.
Okay.
I don't think I don't think there's not a coach that if you plucked him from the team would crater faster than Kyle Shanahan. I think Shanahan and what he's doing to legitimately orchestrate an offense where, call Brock Purdy at his best, top 12 quarterback in the league, and talent. I'm just talking talent.
Mm-hmm.
Top 12, top 14. he's going to finish the year as maybe the second best statistical season of any quarterback in NFL history. That to me, obviously give Purdy his flowers. That to me is a massive tip of the cap to what Kyle Shanahan has done this year and continues to do every year. He has habitually been one of the biggest offensive innovators the NFL has seen over the last, ever since he's been given the opportunity to be an offensive play caller. And his system, Bobby Slowick and Mike McDaniel, two play callers, the number 2 quarterback in EPA per dropback when kept clean is Tua Tagovailoa. The number 3 quarterback in EPA per dropback when kept clean, so when there's no pressure, is CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud is good, Tua Tagovailoa is good, but that offense, when there's in the structure of the play, when there is not pressure, when things do not get off script, is maximizing more than any other offense in the league. And it's consistent with his tree. I think that Kyle Shanahan needs more credit for the tree that he's put together. Better than the Belichick tree, arguably better than the McVay tree. I'm all there for Shanahan getting more recognition. And if there's a year to give it to him, it's when his running back's in the conversation for MVP, his quarterback's in the conversation for MVP. That to me is enough. That to me is enough. And their defense hasn't been the same since Demeco Ryans left. It's taken a small step back. And they're still winning games, hand over fist, beating some of the best teams in the league.
See, I agree with all those points except for one, and it's that Mike McDaniel has outpaced Kyle Shanahan as an offensive mind. He has this year, and he is number 1 on my list. Mike McDaniel, they have the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL. Can you name the 5 starting linemen for the Miami Dolphins? They have a average to below average offensive line.
Yeah.
And they've been banged up this year. To have the number 1 rushing offense, and then to have the number 1 offensive points per game, and you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but Kansas City Chiefs had Tyreek Hill at one point, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and they had comparable offenses, but they had Patrick Mahomes versus Tua Tagovailoa, and people are the fact that Mike McDaniel's been able to make Tua Tagovailoa, statistically at least, play like Patrick Mahomes is in and of itself an unbelievable feat. The innovation aspect, he's the most copied offense coordinator in the NFL this season with the invention of the cheat motion, other stuff they do in the running game, especially. I think it has to be him, man. And obviously they've gone into funks at times. They're not infallible, but I think that's more of a product of the fact that this isn't that great of a football team. They aren't uber talented. They have high-end talent in guys like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle for sure. But Raheem Mostert was found off the street a couple of years ago, right? Devon Achane was a 3rd rounder that they have playing Pro Bowlers, all pros, right? So I think a lot of that is because the job Mike McDaniel's done. I think he now is my coach of the year.
Mike McDaniel's a great pick. It's another reason why, and we had this conversation the last time we talked about awards, that there needs to be offensive play caller of the year and defensive play caller of the year so that you don't have to fit Mike McDaniel into coach of the year to give him this year-end honor and year-end whatever significance. If you had that, it'd be
if you had 9/11 speech of the year, it would go to Sean McDermott.
Yeah, Sean McDermott. The memes on the Sean McDermott stuff have been elite. Not one has missed. All of them are good. It's been very good. I have loved it.
They kind of turned it around though. Joe Brady for assistant of the year. After that speech, that was the turning point.
I wonder if anyone has, what the locker room's like since that has dropped, and if anyone's dropped any, cheeky jokes. I feel like there's got to be some. The group chats have to be, when they win, they're throwing up some plane emojis in the group chats and stuff. I don't know. There's got to be something there. That's just there's meat on the bone. There's meat on the bone with that whole thing.
Well, have they played the Jets since then? When do they play the Jets? That game's going to go well for them. I feel like they'll be ready for that one.
I wish I could have heard the speech. I wish I could. No, it would have been a good bit if Sean, after this latest win, was this reminds me a lot, and kind of started back into it to get the people going. I don't know how he's handled it, but I hope he's handled it with some jest.
He gets a Pearl Harbor. He gets in 1941.
They surprised us.
What would happen?
They shocked us there. We weren't ready for it. We weren't prepared.
We'll get back to Austin Gayle in just a second, but first, today's podcast brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of events, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for an average savings of 18%. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets the same section, same row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's the Gametime app, code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. Guaranteed.
We left Dan Campbell off.
Oh, we did leave Dan Campbell.
Neither of us have Dan Campbell in top 3. Why? I have some reasons. You have some reasons. Go.
Okay. Well, one, not every good coaching job is coach of the year worthy, right? I think they've done well. They're still feel like a clear tier behind the top teams in the NFC, though, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is that it still feels like a team that's not quite there to compete, whereas 49ers obviously look like the best team in the NFC. Dolphins look like they have as good a chance as anyone in the AFC if they can get home field advantage. So honestly, I'd even go like John Harbaugh over Dan Campbell at this point, and we didn't even discuss him either.
My thing is, would you rather have Dan Campbell or Ben Johnson next year if you're a Lions fan?
Yeah, I mean, you're Ben Johnson. I'm
right, and that to me makes it harder to say. I think Dan Campbell, what he's done to change the culture and whatever impact he's had on some of the decision-making process around personnel, I think that has had impact over the last 3 years. If there was like a 3-year coach of the year award, he has had a lot of success, like bringing in the right guys, actually creating a culture that's backed up like on the football field, where the Detroit Lions like look different. They feel different. They play different. And that I think has been in the embodiment of who he is, and like him bringing in a ton of former players as coaches and all this stuff. And I think it's that. Yeah.
I was going to say it's difficult to give a guy coach of the year who's not calling plays, right? Mm-hmm. Because everyone else who we discussed theoretically does the same thing Dan Campbell does in terms of setting the tone, in terms of building the culture. Like that's their job. I mean, you watch Mike McDaniel on Hard Knocks, and like that's what he's doing, taking responsibility, leading by example. And then on top of that, then they have like more credentials on top of that. They have all the things that Dan Campbell's doing. And then also, oh, by the way, we're innovative offensive, defensive minds, whatever, calling plays, leading a top-end offense, top-end defense. Whereas, like you said, you have Dan Campbell next year, but no Ben Johnson. Do you have the same results? Do you have even close to the same results? I don't know. Yeah. We shall see. Because they probably won't. Because Ben Johnson's going to.
I still think Dan Campbell's been great. I'm not trying to hurt on him. Yeah, I just.
I was saying, if you're doing coach of the year, like he's great for your franchise. You love to have him as coach of your franchise. No one's debating that. Yeah. It's just you would rather have Mike Daniel, right? You'd rather have Kyle Shanahan. You just flat out would.
Yeah, true. And I'm here for the Coach of the Year award becoming essentially who's the best coach in the NFL that year, and it doesn't matter what they did previously. Like this, let's just keep. Yeah, going.
Like Andy Reid should have like 4 or 5. Bill Belichick should have like 4 or 5. Belichick, I think, has 3. Yeah. But like they should have numerous because they're the best. Like that's how you get to be the best.
That's how it should be. Right? It's not supposed. It's become oddly this weird like you almost have to have low expectations to win it type of thing, and that to me is like that's lame. That doesn't make any sense to me.
And people oftentimes give low expectations to a team because they think the coach stinks, right? Teams have high expectations.
They don't know anything about the coach, right? Like Demeco Ryans and all these first-year head coaches, like you did not have expectations for them, and if you did, maybe they were lower, right? Like you didn't know what they were going to be. Like if the Cardinals won like 8 games this year, Jonathan Cannon would probably be like up there just because they had such low expectations for that team.
In 2018, so the first year of Mahomes, when they broke all those records offensively, Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year because no one expected the Bears to go 12-4. Matt Nagy won it over freaking Andy Reid that year. What a travesty!
That's vile. That's vile. Who else has won over the last couple of years?
So the last 5, we'll go. Brian Daboll was last year. Mike Vrabel 2 years ago when they got the 1 seed in the AFC.
That one was actually kind of sick.
That was deserving.
I feel like I'm kind of there for that.
Stefanski in 2020 when they went 11-5. that was kind of like a Browns, hey, you won with the Browns, you're obviously a fantastic coach sort of thing. 2019 was Harbaugh when they went 14-2, had the 1 seed in the AFC. It's 2018, I said it was Nagy. Sean McVay won it his first year as head coach, I believe, 2017. First year as head coach, 2017. Which that one was like a massive turnaround. They went from number 1 overall pick the year prior to that. Jason Garrett, 2016, when they won 13-3. Ron Rivera's won it twice. He won 2015, 2013. Bruce Arians won it twice.
Ron Rivera has won it twice with the Panthers when Cam Newton was cooking.
Yeah, wild. So yeah,
and
that's
Ron
not
Rivera
a who's who.
How many does Bill Belichick even have? Does he have any?
So Belichick last won in 2010. He won in 2007. Obviously, when they went 16-0.
And 2003.
And then 03. Yeah. Damn.
He only has one more than Ron Rivera. Wow.
Dude, so of the coaches that won it from 2010 to the 2010s, only Bill Belichick and Sean McVay and John Harbaugh are still with their teams. No more Bruce Arians, no more Jim Harbaugh, no more Ron Rivera with the Panthers, no more Jason Garrett with the Cowboys, and no more Matt Nagy with the Bears. Shows you, I mean, that's like indicative of the award, right? If the guys really were the best coaches in the NFL, they are not out. They're not out within a decade. They just aren't.
Compare that to like NFL MVPs, right? Anyone who's won an NFL MVP,
yes, no one's out
has
within
been
a decade.
Has been like
in their prime.
Rodgers, Mahomes, Brady, Matt Ryan in 2016, Cam Newton in 2015, AP that insane year.
Yeah, and that's basically what we're arguing is that like, hey, actually evaluate who's the best. Don't just do expectations versus reality. Just like who's the best.
Who's the best player?
Your expectations bake in that they're the best in the beginning of the season with a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let's start changing the narrative, buddy. Let's start changing the narrative. It starts.
We're doing our best.
It starts with this pop.
We're doing our best. Hi, brother. Appreciate having you on. We'll talk to you again next week. Always great catching up with AG later on this week. I did a nice little crossover podcast with the Locked On NFL guys, Ross Jackson. That'll be up on our channel and Locked On NFL channel. Make sure to check that out. We did top 5 MVP candidates. We did top 5 teams in the NFL and bottom 5 teams in the NFL. Some good conversation there. And then I still will be working throughout the holidays, as I always do. PFF completely desensitized me to not working on the holidays as an option even. So I'll be releasing pods next week on Christmas through New Year. So very excited about that. And we will talk to you next time. You listen to Renner Ranks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.